Last week, Andrew and myself, together with some buddies from Western Port ADA branch, headed off on a very different style of hunt and rafted into some great looking backcountry to stalk my favourite species of all, the mighty Sambar. Gearing up for this trip was pretty involved, and we'd done some thorough research into what to take, as well as how and where we'd store it, not to mention the river itself, access and recovery, plus the terrain we'd be hunting. Between us, we were using conventional inflatable rafts as well as the latest design in lightweight pack rafts, and after a few k's of floating, the river gradually got narrower and faster, and while the rapids tested us out, they were awesome fun and nothing we couldn't handle. After setting up our first camp and getting out for a hunt, we tracked out some promising sign and got a few fleeting glimpses of deer, but while the sign was there, they were proving hard to find. At mid-morning on our second day, we arrived back at camp to pack up and head deeper into the bush, eager to explore some new country. Going to be camp for our second night. We've got a pretty gnarly rapid to take on first thing in the morning. It was a good little session getting down to here though. The river was definitely flowing faster and a bit higher and a bit dirtier, so it happened quick, but no one's in yet. We're all relatively dry. So quick setup and yeah, coming up to 3 o'clock, so it's really go time for hunting. We don't want to waste much time and get straight into the hills here. See what we can find. The golden hour rapidly approaching, we all had camp sorted in record time. Wetsuits were swapped out for camo, packs loaded, then we all split off to explore the surrounding gullies. Excited about the prospects of heading up into this big side system. We're going to do a little recon up here this afternoon, just Andrew and I, and then if it's looking good, we'll all punch in here tomorrow, split up and take a side, take different gullies, because it's a big system. But this is the first side system that's actually held running water. This, it's got a creek in it. This country's been so dry. So usually a good sign of life. We've got onto some red hot stag sign here. This gully's looking really good. Really nice clear faces over opposite us. And then we get a big game trail. Marks all over it. Fresh crap. And then these wattles have been rubbed green as green. Like this morning, that fresh scrape was done after the rain last night. One there. Stag is taking a leak right there. Ready stag. Got a fresh scrape here. The stag's gone a bit nuts. And over here, got bananas. Check out that. Absolutely plowed it. Just as the action started hotting up for us, a shot rang out and it seemed we weren't the only ones getting into it.
A couple of shots and a bit of chatter on the radio. Daz and Azza had come through with the goods. I shot a deer across the river, and it's down, so they've got to go down to the river, take a raft across it, climb up and retrieve it. So that's great, we've got some meat. We've been having an adrenaline charge stalk this afternoon on this stag that's been just rutting up, scraping up, maybe fighting with another one. We can't work out what's going on. So many marks. We haven't really caught up to them. Unfortunately, we're going to have to turn back, but it means we'll come back in here in the morning and give it another red hot go. But a great bit of country. Beautiful face here opposite to glass too.
Over at Daz's spot by the river, he'd got a ripper shot in on a hind, taking it cleanly, but it had fallen, then wedged in the steep bluffs. So to save time in the recovery, he freed it and managed to land it perfectly right on the bank, only centimetres away from disappearing downriver. The boys then got real busy and all pitched in and raced to battle fading light. And between them, they got the whole deer carcass back across in the rafts before it was too dangerous to cross. Back over on our side, we waited until last shooting light to try and catch out the stag who'd been marking up hard, but we didn't see anything else move. So we headed straight back to camp in the dark, eager to catch up with Daz and hear firsthand about the afternoon's excitement.
Well, that's the best sight you can come back to. Some fresh venison hanging in camp. You guys have had a wild ride. That's got to be the wildest recovery you've ever done.
Hey, the challenge of that rapid straight out of here to get across, the boys did so well to help out. We, from the top to the bottom, I think about 40 minutes it took. We raced down, we're racing the light. We got those pack rafts were invaluable.
Well, they've come into their own, haven't they, already?
Just the manoeuvrability and with the extra weight to float across that rapid as it was going the wrong way to get across. We were able to get in there. We only used a little bit of the water to get there and up the hill and get this girl cut up and down and back to camp, hung up for the night.
We've punched up 3 or 4 Ks up and back, and you've shot that 100 metres from our tents.
What are the chances? I thought I'd come up high to have a look above you guys and say something. So I spun around, and poor Aaron was down here, and I said, I'll meet you up the hill, and I jumped around and said, you need to get up here now. And he's dropped his bolt on the ground, and it was chaos from then on, but it all worked out in the end. We got some...
The benefits of pushing into remote country, eh? The deer sitting up above camp. Well, that's going to be tomorrow night's dinner. We're going to eat like kings. Yep. Well done, buddy.
Yep.
Just catch my breath here. We've punched up high to start the day, a big day, as we push right back up into this system where we saw all that sign yesterday afternoon.
Down there, Don, you just glassing out?
The boys are just catching up. They're down there below us, and also on the other side here. Now, funnily enough, Daz, when he shot that deer yesterday, was over on the dry north face. We're seeing all this sign down here and glassing that beautiful country that's on the south face. But we're just not seeing deer on it, as much as it makes sense that they'd be over there. Everything's over here in the dry junk. And mentally, it's a bit of a challenge to get yourself, pull yourself off that sign and off that beautiful feed area and come up here in the dry junk where they are. But hey, that's Sambar. And everything points to them being over this side. So let's hope we get amongst the action and can find them. You know, I'll kick them out of their beds up here as this sun soon pops and lights up this face. Hopefully that's where they're hanging out. We've got a decent breeze coming our way. It's a bit swirly, but it's better than nothing.
We'd planned a big day working our way up through the valley, and as we punched through more scrub, a call came over the rhino from Daz. He'd just been glassing over our way with the 15s and seen a stag moving through an open patch in the very next gully. He told us to keep punching higher, and if we could break out into a clearing, we might be able to catch out the stag. His advice was spot on, and that's exactly where we found him.
He's gone in behind the eucalypt. Still pretty broken cover, but I need him to take about 2 body lengths forward and he's in the clear. It's probably the only shot I'm going to get.
the adrenaline's just turned to the shakes now, the post-shot shakes. I got a good solid hit on that first shot. I was aiming just behind the shoulder, angling in, quartering in behind him as he stopped and angled up. He ran about 50 yards out before slowing and stopping. I sent a second one, I think that missed. But just got a big follow-up job now. As usual with Sambar, they take a hit and run, unless you hit the spine. So I'm going to leave Andrew here to mark up the spot. It's going to be very hard to find that when I get over on that face, and I'll get to where we shot him and then start trucking him out. Always a relief to find blood on the follow-up. There's a few drops here starting to appear now. Not this one on the leaf, not much. This is where the real commitment comes in. On the follow-up, when those big stags run hard, they leave, you know, a pretty good mark. But in this dry ground, particularly when they slow down, they hardly just, you know, scuff a leaf even. But we have got drops of blood. This is looking like congealed lung blood. That makes a big difference between, you know, a muscle hit, a leg hit or something like that, where they can run a long way. So I'm actually feeling pretty confident now. There's a few more drops there, dried up of quite clear blood. Time to really knuckle down and go really slow, drop by drop, print by print, till we find him. Yeah, more drops here. Yeah. On the side of that leaf. This is where I took my second follow-up shot from. It's where he's bolted. There's blood there, you can see there at the end of the barrel. And he's turned to run here and he's smeared that leaf. And that's quite high. He's running that way. That was the entrance shot. This stag's starting to head straight downhill now, which is a really good sign. The wounded animal running down. If not, we think he's starting to tumble. Andrew's just picked up there a big patch of blood and he's bashed those hakias down. So, looks like he's really starting to stumble. Andrew just got a glimpse of him down here. Best news ever. We've got a stag piled up against a tree down here. Look at the tumble he's taken. He wiped out this stuff. Oh yeah. See him down there against that burnt tree. Oh. Oh. Oh, he's in hard velvet. That's why he looked a bit grey. It's a little fella. You beauty. Check this out. Put this rifle somewhere it doesn't fall away. Oh God. Nice recovery here. Don't they die in the most convenient places? Dogwood. Oh. There we go. Need to give Daz some credit for his part in this hunt. He was way back on a ridge behind us as we were stalking through and saw our little orange hats coming through the scrub and actually saw this guy feeding on a face above us. Called it in on the radio and said if you can get up, you're a good chance to spot this guy as he's feeding on an opposite face. That's what happened so quick. Andrew and I really bolted up through the scrub, got the lungs and the legs pumping and got up to him and set up there as he fed across that open face. Ranged him at 240, I think, with the Swarrows. The shot came in on this side, quartering in. I was really confident with that first hit. As we followed up, that blood trail
light blood trail appeared pretty quick, and he's only ran about or moved about 50, 75 metres around into the scrub before stopping and what seemed to get the wobbles and then come tumbling down. Here in your traditional Sambar carry-out on a horrendously steep face in the middle of the thick scrub, and these saplings here have stopped him from going down another 100 or so metres down another steep shaly face. So a young hard velvet stag. He's going to eat really well, this guy, being out of the later stages of velvet. He's got a little bald nose here too, which is interesting. He's been rubbing up and down on trees, and quite a light coloured face, which is another interesting thing you don't often see on Sambar. On this hunt, I've been fortunate enough to be using the new Seiko 85 Thin Light 2, and this is one beautiful rifle. This is actually the first one in the country. Our good friends at Beretta got it to us to use for this hunt. Down at the range the other day, they were slotting in pinhole shots, and I couldn't wait to get it up the bush. And at that shot at 240, I had absolute confidence. The caliber was 7mm 08, a little bit small for a Sambar caliber, but it was the first one that came in through customs, and I wasn't going to say no to it, but did the job. 140 grain bullet and travelling very fast, very similar to a 308 really, fast and flat. On top here, had a Steiner Night Hunter, 2 to 8, dialed it into about 8 or 9 for that shot at 200, and I would have been confident anything out to, to 400 metres with this rifle. It's got an adjustable cheek piece on it. These can seem a bit gimmicky, but I'll tell you what, 2 notches up, you just hold that, press that button in and roll it up notch by notch. 2 notches up is absolutely perfect for me. Just gets my cheek up and straight down the centre of that scope. It's got a Cerakote finish, which is extremely durable. We've been bashing this around on this trip through the scrub, and not a single mark on that. It's got elastic polymer grips. In the rain and drizzle the last couple of days, it's been amazing how grippy they are, and a polymer stock as well. But it's carbon bedded, so it's got rock solid bedding. The carbon is totally, immune to heat. So as the rifle heats up, it doesn't move. So in under there is the carbon bedding. I was just having a laugh with Andrew. It's actually bedded on a layer of dogwood at the moment. Coming down that scrub, we'll clear that out. So I think these are going to be well adopted by Sambar hunters in Australia as they come in, and deer hunters. It's just such a beautiful rifle. Short barrel, it's great in this scrub, and it's certainly done its job here today. So Andrew and I have got a good job here quartering this animal up and carrying it out. We'll ferry it out a couple of trips over the ridges here in spurs and get it down to the rafts. And the beauty of having the raft is that we've got plenty of room and plenty of space and weight carrying ability to get all this meat out. So down to the job of breaking it up and carrying it out. The knife I'm running on this hunt is the Benchmade Steep Country Hunter. I really like what Benchmade are doing and what they represent as a company with their US made lines and their premium steel. This is S30V steel, so a far superior product to a lot of the mass produced Asian stuff. Nice little blaze handle and a Kydex sheath, and this razor sharp steel is going to handle this animal and a couple more, probably no worries before it needs to be touched up again. So we'll get into the back straps of the hindquarters. That's our first port of call. That's his hip bone there, where the rump comes in. Right across there is where I want to start for this back strap.
The back strap or loin is classed as a premium cut and is always melt in your mouth delicious, and one of the first and easiest cuts to take out when field dressing in the bush. While I often get requests for venison from friends that haven't tried it before, or sometimes give it away when I'm in excess, it's a very special kind of friend that gets a premium cut like this one. And I generally go by the rule that if you weren't there to carry it out, then this rules you out of any premium cuts. With knife cuts adjacent to the spine and along the top of the ribs, the whole piece is cut off at the base of the neck where the meat starts to change composition and toughen. And with that, the job is done. I then like to move on to the hindquarters where the majority of the meat is held in larger muscle groups. The process starts by cutting down through the crease, then along the hip or H-bone, and the leg will come away easily after detaching the joint. With sambar, a back leg can easily weigh upwards of 20 kilos depending on the size of the animal, which in turn provides an amazing haul of premium, free-range, low-fat, organic meat.
First hind leg's off, and on each of these we'll get a top side, a silver side, the round, the back part of the back strap and the rump, and you'll get a girello and a shank or leg, or also bucco cuts if you want them. Probably 10 kilos of prime venison in there. So because we've got a pretty massive carry out to get it back to camp, we're going ultimate weight saving mode. So we're breaking down the quarters, then we're starting to bone out. So what I've done here with the first hind quarter is now I've got that off and clean. I've come along the femur, the top one, and cut that out. And what I've got there is that beautiful round, or the nut. Oh. So this is a hind leg, a pretty unmanageable lump of venison when you're this far in. And with that first one that we've boned out, we've turned it into that and that. And that actually includes both the back straps. So very easy to pack. And we've thrown away all that heavy waste of the hock, the hoof, and a bit of shank and ankle meat, really. Boning out deer is definitely a luxury you can only afford to do when you shoot a deer in the morning. It does take a bit of time, but it's really only time you're going to do back home anyway afterwards. So it makes sense to just soak up the surroundings, admire the day and get into it. So with that leg boned out, that's what you're left with as junk. Just a big heavy bone, foot, fur, and then we're left with the prime cuts. So what we get from a hind leg is a girello, a round, or the nut, a silver side, the top side, a bit of rump, and the top best part of the shank.
With all the meat boned out, including the prized eye fillets, it had cooled quickly in the shade and was now ready for loading. Due to the large body size of sambar and the terrain they inhabit, it's important to have a backpack that's purpose-built and can maintain its comfort with full loads, as well as have the build quality to stand up to the punishment of the high country. I always hunt sambar with a pack that has a reinforced full torso length back panel to ensure weight is concentrated on my hips and not on my shoulders. It also has the size capability to pack large amounts of meat. Most of the time the pack is half empty, but when an animal is down, I can take the contents of the pack, move it to the additional side pockets, and have virtually the whole main compartment ready to haul out the precious game. With the boned out venison wrapped in meat bags, I was easily able to fit in 1.5 hind quarters, both back straps, plus the eye fillets. With the side pockets now holding most of my gear and attached to the outside of the pack, we were ready to start the real work.
It's all loaded. Between Andrew and I, we've boned it out, got it all packed and arranged. It's just now time to let the legs and lungs do the work and ship this out. On a parting note, for any of those that sit on the fence regarding the whole hunting thing and shooting animals and taking the meat, I often say to people that challenge me about having no respect for animals by shooting them or hunting them, and I always say that your respect for an animal goes to a whole new level and way beyond what people can understand that buy their meat from a supermarket. When you stalk an animal, you hunt an animal, you decide whether it lives or dies, you take that shot, you follow up that shot, you find it, you start to dress it down. Hours after that 1 second trigger action happens, you load up this meat, you carry it out, you get back home, you start to eat it. And for those that might buy something in a supermarket packet and have absolutely no connection to where that meat came from, it's pretty easy to waste it or take shots at those that do it like we do it. But when you do all this yourself and it comes down to eat that meat, you've certainly got a whole new level of appreciation and respect in regards to wastage and maximising the yield of that animal. Respecting the animal, respecting the hunt.
It took us most of the day to get back to camp, and by early evening the rest of the guys were also back with a couple of brief sightings but no more deer being taken. Greg and Azza got stuck into entree before dark, and then we tended to some of the chores needed to square away our gear and filter water in preparation for the raft out the next day. We still had main course to come though, and with a big hunger to bust, it was time to pull out one of our all-time favourites.
Well, it's become a bit of a backpack tradition for us to cook up some venison. Andrew and I were feeling quietly confident, maybe a little bit overly confident that we'd get a deer. It was looking pretty dodgy until yesterday afternoon, and then Dazza saved the day, taking this hind over the river there that the boys had a pretty gnarly retrieval on. So it's had a day to set overnight. So we've got a nice piece of backstrap taken off there. I've cleaned that up, so a couple of pieces of backstrap. Keeping it simple as always. We're going to go with a rub, bring out the flavour, give us a bit of extra zing on it. Tonight is Grill Mate's low and slow Tennessee Smokehouse barbecue rub. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure it'll look good, taste good. We've got broccoli, we've got corn, and the gourmet goodness of Deb mashed potato.
With the backstrap coated in olive oil, the last of the rub was applied to both sides, then it was straight on over hot coals first, then finished over a cooler part of the fire.
Cooking time's up on the grill. We've just let it rest in a bit of foil. And oh, have a look at this. Excuse mouths. If I had a fork, I'd use it, but I don't. I will slice it up. Oh, a few hungry rafters to feed. I think this is going to do the job. All right, plate up.
I don't know what it is, but for such a simple meal that would probably be classed as pretty boring back home, ones like this out in the bush always seem pretty damn special. Our final morning arrived and it had me asking again, what is it with rain and packing up? It somehow seems to happen way too often, and it sure does suck when you have to break camp in bad weather. Not to mention there's no incentive to get out of a warm sleeping bag when you know the hunt's over and all that's left is to pack up wet gear and head back to civilization. Nevertheless, we started to grind away at the task, but what was foremost in our minds was that we now had bigger issues than a wet pack-up. Waiting for us straight out in front of camp was the biggest rapid of the trip, and thanks to the overnight rain, the water level was now at its highest and the river flowing its fastest, so our final leg sure was going to get off to an action-packed start. I headed well upstream to get a line at the rapid, but made a meal of it by falling in the freezing water even before I'd started. Downstream, all the boys could see was my lone croc floating past, and they thought I was gone forever. Alas, I rose like Jon Snow from the freezing depths to go first and take on the rapid. The raft was heavy with venison and much harder to manoeuvre. It was exciting and a little bit hairy, and as I started down, I thought I'd blown my line and was heading side on for the rocks and possibly a flip, but I made it through all okay. The others followed suit and everyone stayed upright. And between us, in fits of anxious laughter, the last rapid was conquered. It sure made for a fitting and memorable end to an awesome Sambar hunt that was going to be very hard to top.
Moroka 30 is the proud hunting clothing and equipment sponsor of Beyond the Divide, custom designed for our local conditions and uniquely Australian. Ask for it in store at your local gun shop or check out the full range at moroka30.com.au.